Are you filming a podcast or trying to figure out how to film a podcast and you don't know how to sync your audio with your video? In this video, I'm going to show you how. So I've had several questions on how I do my video podcast when it comes to syncing up my audio to my video. And I do this whether it's a 2-person podcast, 3-person, or even a 4-person podcast. But first I'm going to show you the equipment. So what I use is the Samson Q9U video podcast mic. And I love this microphone. It's about $100 to $150 at the time of shooting this video. And I have 4 of them for whenever I need it. Now I have this plugged in via XLR cable to the Zoom PodTrack P4, which I have right here. The cool thing about the Zoom PodTrack P4 is it's an external audio recorder, and I can plug in 4 ports. So I have XLRs 1 through 4 at the top, and then I can also have 4 headphones connected to the bottom. Now I'm not connecting the microphone or the Zoom PodTrack P4 to the camera at all. This is recording through a SD card, which is plugged into the Zoom PodTrack P4. Now, whether you have any other audio recorder that uses an SD card, it is going to be a separate file. Now I am also recording on the Sony FX30, which has its own SD card. Now I am having to just sync that up in Premiere Pro because that's the software that I use. Now when I'm in Premiere Pro, what I do is that I take the SD card of my camera and then the SD card of my Zoom PodTrack P4. I put those 2 files into a sequence project in Premiere Pro, and then I just right click and I synchronize those 2. The important thing is that whatever camera that you have, it should be recording its own audio as well. We call it just a scratch audio. So rewinding back, I have a video podcast where I have a camera and I have my microphones, but they are not physically connected to each other. But what is physically connected is the microphone itself into the audio recorder or the audio interface, which I use the Zoom PodTrack P4. Now, I chose this initially. I had a 2-person podcast, but I thought about eventually I'm going to maybe have a 3-person or 4-person podcast, and I'm glad I did. So if you are looking into doing your own podcast, I highly recommend the Zoom PodTrack P4 because you can grow into this device. So that is how I sync up my audio to my video whenever I do video podcasts. So thanks for watching this video. If you are interested, I have a video podcast called the Tuesdays Podcast on YouTube that you can check out, and you can actually see that the 3-person to 4-person podcast setup that I do. I also have some videos on this channel from a podcast that I did called the PT Lounge, which was a 2-person podcast, and I also have a studio tour video on this channel. If you have any questions on how to set up certain equipment, set up your own video podcast studio, leave a comment below and I will try to get those answered. I try to answer every question that I get on YouTube, and I try to make videos on it as well. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I'm going to be actually doing an updated video podcast studio tour because I've upgraded my space and all my equipment. So stay tuned for that.